you around you. Um, Ms. Wyndham, Representative Creekmore, can y'all hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. Who else do we have there on? I can't see. Everybody give us a thumbs up on Zoom if they can hear us. I see TJ.
Jeff, it's TJ. I got you loud and clear.
All right, good. Good deal. Good deal. Okay, well, so earlier this month we had an organizational meeting, and as I've been talking to members, this is a task force that's in its infancy. We'll see what happens. I want anybody that thinks that they have any idea at all of how to help our veterans with their mental health, suicide prevention. It may be something that the state can help, may not can help, but let's just talk it through. And I have no idea what type of time length this meeting will be. Feel free to leave if you have other obligations. I'm gonna be here until we finish. I would like for us to go around the room because we do have a lot of new faces in here and just say, you know, who you are, what organization you're with, and then we'll get to that. But before we do that, I want to recognize the chairman, Chairman Hobb Bryan being here. Chairman, we'll start with you, and if you just have any remarks that you'd like to say, we appreciate you being here.
I'm just here to listen and learn. Thank you.
I'm Cindy Wittenberg. I am the president of Soldiers Freedom Outdoors Mississippi.
I'm Kevin Wittenberg, also with Soldiers Freedom Outdoors, 15-year plus combat veteran for deployments. So
I'm Dr. Tom Recor. I'm the medical director for the Department of Mental Health. And in a previous career, I was a captain in the Marine Corps, deployed to Fallujah with 2nd Reconnaissance Battalion for Phantom Fury. And so I have some thoughts that I think hopefully the intersection of these two careers can be helpful to the committee and to the veterans of Mississippi. Appreciate you.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Dr. Jameson Taylor, American Family Association. Unlike Dr. Recor, I'm not the kind of doctor that can actually help you, but I'm happy to share my thoughts with you guys this morning.
I'm Ben Derrick. I'm the executive director of the Soldier Fund, a nonprofit pointed specifically to the National Guard Special Forces community.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Ellis Monk. I am the adjutant for the Mississippi Army National Guard, former battalion commander for 2nd Battalion 20 Special Forces.
Jason Byrd, chaplain, 66th Troop Command, Mississippi Army National Guard.
Craig Puckett, State Command Chaplain for the Mississippi National Guard, as well as I serve with the Mississippi Veterans Affairs as a chaplain.
Dan Fordyce, founder of the Warrior Bonfire Program, and also served in the National Guard and the 223rd early in my career, and then the 20th Special Forces later on.
Good morning. I'm Caroline Kennard, and I am the Director of Logistics for Mississippi Veteran Affairs.
Good morning. Chris Ellis. I'm the Legislative Liaison for Mississippi Veterans Affairs.
Okay, and this may be a little bit challenging, but TJ, let's start with you with your introduction on Zoom.
TJ Stute, Commandant of the Mississippi National Guard's Regional Counter-Drug Training Academy and a member of the Special Operations Detachment South.
All right, Chairman Creekmore, if you'll go ahead.
Hey, Sam Creekmore, Mississippi House of Representatives.
Ms. Wyndham.
Teresa Wyndham, Mississippi State Department of Health.
All right, and I believe it's Dr. Claire Durst, right?
Hi, I'm Claire Durst. I'm a registered nurse. I'm also the former medical director of a Ibogaine clinic in Mexico, and I'm an ambassador for Americans for Ibogaine.
Awesome. All right, looks like we have Chairman Carpenter, is that right? Can't hear you, Chairman. Had to squint to see you, but we work on the mute button. All right, and I see that we have, excuse me if it's Dr. Miss Jessica Green.
Good morning. I'm Jessica Green from the 172nd Maintenance Group in Jackson, Mississippi.
Good deal. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody being here. Again, I don't know how long this will or will not last. I don't know what all we are not bringing to the table, but I want us to help. I think we have a good cause here in what we're doing. And the main thing that we want to do is try to figure out ways that the Mississippi State Legislature can be of assistance to you or your organization can be of assistance to the Mississippi Legislature to help with veterans' mental health. We're coming from a bunch of different angles. I do know that Dr. Jameson Taylor has got kind of a time crunch, and so I'd like for us to start off with him. But I want you to all know that this is a informal setting. I want anybody to feel free to speak whenever about whatever it is that you think you can contribute. I obviously believe that government is not the answer to all the problems. It never should be, but maybe there's something that we can do to try to help. And so, Dr. Taylor, if you will, tell us what you think you have to bring to the table.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Chairman Tate, Chairman Carpenter, Chairman Creekmore, and Chairman Bryan. I'm honored to be speaking with y'all, and I thank each of you in the room for your service and the sacrifices that you have made for our country and in our communities. So as I mentioned, I'm Dr. Jameson Taylor. I have about 25 years of experience working on state level policy of all sorts. I've been here in Mississippi for about 15 years and worked on bills as diverse as the third grade reading gate, to the bill that overturned Roe v. Wade, to working with Chairman Carpenter to streamline occupational licenses for military personnel moving to Mississippi. So worked on all kinds of things. And in particular, I've spent a lot of time looking at welfare and healthcare policy. In 2017, I helped lawmakers pass the HOPE Act, which did some simple things like check to see whether dead people were on Mississippi welfare programs, or that is, people stealing people's identities to get on welfare, to check to see whether or not the people on our welfare programs were residents of Mississippi. Now, one thing that was not in that HOPE Act was anything related to TANF. That's a funny story as to why there's nothing related to TANF in it. I can tell that another day. But those of you who are not familiar with TANF, TANF is a federal and state-run cash welfare program. Now, of course, a few years ago, there were some unpleasantries related to TANF. And so people are now hesitant to use this money for more productive endeavors. What I want to talk to you about today, though, is how military personnel, military families can tap into some of this TANF funding. So when we think about TANF, as of fiscal year 2023, Mississippi had about $233 million in TANF funds available for use. We receive about $90 million a year, and then we have unused funds that are available for us to use, about $150 million surplus right now. Under federal law, the state of Mississippi can use TANF cash welfare for two things. First, we can distribute the money directly to very low-income people, low-income families, and that is being done. In addition, the state can allocate TANF funding to support 4 activities in Mississippi communities. First, to provide assistance, and this is quoting from the federal law. First, to provide assistance to needy families so that children can be cared for in their own homes or in the homes of relatives. Second, in the dependence of needy parents on government benefits by promoting job preparation, work, and marriage. Third, prevent and reduce the incidence of out-of-wedlock pregnancies. And finally, encourage the formation and maintenance of 2-parent families. Now, Mississippi, like a lot of other states, do we have a question? Okay. Mississippi, like a lot of other states, is using a lot of their TANF funding for workforce development training and also to provide government subsidized daycare. That said, we have a large balance of unobligated funds, as I mentioned, about $150 million. So a few years ago, when I started to learn about what TANF was really supposed to be used for, namely all four of these purposes, I started to wonder, how can we in particular take advantage of this fourth purpose to encourage the formation and maintenance of two-parent families? Texas had a program to do something like that about 15 years ago. Governor Stitt in Oklahoma has also been doing a few things with this money, but by and large, the states have not been using this money effectively to accomplish this fourth purpose of TANF. So in my day job, I run the Center for Government Renewal with AFA Action. And in that capacity, I'm very interested in thinking about the conditions necessary to strengthen marriages and families in Mississippi and around the country. Let's just start to think about, well, how can we use this fourth purpose of TANF to encourage strong families? And why aren't states really using this money right now? And so as I thought about it some more, it seemed to me that what we should pursue is a kind of proof of concept. And so then reflecting on what Representative Carpenter and I had done previously on occupational licensing, namely trying that out, opening that up to military families, and then eventually that became available to other people moving to Mississippi. As I thought about that, I thought, well, why not have a bill to allow the use of TANF funds to support military families and first responder families? Now, in researching this to see whether or not this is feasible and talking to federal policymakers, it certainly is feasible. I was shocked to find that the divorce rate for military families is the highest among all occupations. And as you might guess, the divorce rate in particular for police officers, but other first responders, is also very high. So in talking to Chairman Tate and Chairman Carpenter about this, we hit on a bill idea to direct the Mississippi Department of Human Services to use some of this TANF funding, which we have sitting in a pot, use some of this TANF funding to provide marriage counseling to military families and first responder families. So those bills were first introduced here in Mississippi in 2025, and we're looking forward to getting the bills passed in 2026. Now, I'll be honest, the Department of Human Services didn't particularly see a need for the legislation. The sense is, they're the experts. They want to be the ones that are directing how to use this money. That said, they're not directing or using all of the money right now. So our thought was, hey, let's start with $10 million. This can be used to support marriage counseling for military families and first responders. The other thing I'd say is I'd urge the legislature to think more deeply about our welfare programs and how they can be improved in our communities. For instance, if we take the department at their word, they stated a couple of weeks ago in a public meeting on tape that they weren't even following federal and state law and verifying eligibility for food stamps. Thus, when the department says, hey, we've got this, we think we can find a better use for this money, I would encourage lawmakers to think about that and realize that really the accountability and the responsibility lies with the legislature. So whether you decide to use your TANF funds for this program or another, I just want to leave you with the idea today that there is federal money that can be used to support military families, especially in this fourth purpose of TANF, to support strong marriages. So with that, I want to introduce my good friend, Jerry Angelo. I don't know if we have him on Zoom right now, but I'm hearing my phone buzz. So let me make sure that he's available. Okay.
Yes, Jameson, I'm available. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is. So to kind of tee things up, Jerry and his wife, Kate, run a marriage ministry in Missouri, and he and I have discussed this idea of using TANF funding to support marriage, in particular for first responders and military families. He's been working on that idea in Missouri, but more to the point, he's also been speaking to folks in the Trump administration. And so they have received funding, federal funding, to launch this program in their state. So he is here today to kind of flesh out what this program would look like, and in particular, how focusing on strong marriages would improve mental health outcomes for military personnel and their families.
Well, thank you, Jameson, for that introduction, and thank you, honorable committee members, for the opportunity to address this critical issue that impacts readiness, stability, and well-being of Mississippi's military and first responder families. And I hope today that I can give you some compelling evidence of why a data-driven case and a proactive investment in marriage and family education is not only a moral obligation to our service members and their families, but it's actually a very profoundly wise and fiscally responsible strategy for the state of Mississippi. And I want to talk briefly about an executive summary that is part of a larger study from Dr. Olson and Turvey, where they talk about marriage and family wellness, and they call it, "Is this corporate America's business?" And so if you think of the business of running the state of Mississippi in that context, then maybe you can get the most benefit out of this. And they go on to say, investing in the marriages and families of your employees increases the profitability of your organization. Home and work are linked. Job satisfaction and home satisfaction go hand in hand. When employees succeed at home, they're more effective at work. So according to Olson and Turvey, when companies invest in the physical and relational wellness of their workers, the returns on that investment can range anywhere from $1.50 to $6.85 for every dollar that they spend on those types of programs. So for every dollar you invest, you get a return on that investment from $1.50 to $6.85. I think that's pretty profound. And so companies that are wanting to increase their profitability will do well to realize that business takes place in the boardroom and the family room, and it's in every company's best financial interest to understand how marriage and family wellness affect their business and to invest in the promotion of relational wellness. So when I told this to Governor Stitt of Oklahoma some years ago, that really caught his attention because he came from a business background in the financial industry. And since then, we've been working on some different principles to implement in the state of Oklahoma, working with other partners. And so, again, if you look at this from kind of a business perspective, you can see that there is a very fiscally responsible strategy here that could be available to Mississippi. And knowing that there's already TANF funds that are created by the federal government and distributed to the states. So there's an opportunity there for the state of Mississippi to utilize that funding. And if you look at the rules of TANF, there are four basic purposes of that. And the main purpose, in my opinion, is to strengthen and maintain a two-parent family. And so this goes right along with that. So when we're investing in those families, in the marital and familial wellness, then if we were to take this executive summary as a guide, then we can expect a return on that investment. And I think that's really important. And another thing to note is that Mississippi's high divorce rate is ranked consistently among the states with the most highest divorce. And roughly half of all marriages in the state end in divorce compared to the national average of about 39%. And Mississippi has the third highest divorce rate in the nation, according to data of 2024. And we can take that a step further and tell you that the elevated risk for military and first responders is even higher. And so while direct state level data is scarce, national statistics show that these professions face even higher rates of marital dissolution. In fact, the divorce rate for first responders is estimated to be between 60 to 75% higher than the national average. So that's police officers reporting the highest rates, female firefighters, in the military. And so they have an extra high rate risk of divorce than just the general population. So again, this is very germane to our discussion here today. And one of the things and so that's kind of the problem. That's kind of the context that we're in. And, some other financial statistics. I didn't know if you guys would be interested in hearing this, but the national average cost of divorce to the taxpayers is $40,000 per couple. That just blows my mind when I was researching this. And it estimates to be the cost of family fragmentation, the cost to the U.S. taxpayers is $112 billion every year. So if you think about what I mentioned earlier about when you invest and what your return on that investment is versus the cost of, the family going off the cliff, it will do Mississippi well to take those funds and invest them in relational wellness for our, at least for our military and first responders, since they're the highest risk. They'll probably get the most bang for their buck. And I kind of wanted to shift now to, what could we do with that money? Well, there are several programs out there that are available. The one that our organization, we are located in Springfield, Missouri. We do operate in other states as well. And we are embarking on a large project that has started this year. And we're going to start our trainings probably in the spring of 2026. And we are going to be servicing the area of Southwest Missouri and also have our sights set on Oklahoma as well. And would love to work with any folks in Mississippi if there's an interest there. But we are part of a larger cohort of national marriage champions and trainers. And so we're not just in Springfield, Missouri. We do have the ability to go into multiple states and incorporate multiple partners. But the program that we just got funded for in Southwest Missouri is to implement Adventures in Marriage. And that particular program is twice as effective as the next most effective program out there in America. And it's, I think, probably because it's kind of a fun, interactive way of teaching the program. So it's not just a boring, dreary, marriage or relational wellness kind of seminar. And the way that it is implemented is it's not only taught, but we also give the participants the opportunity to demonstrate what they've just learned. And statistics say that when you do that kind of a concept and learning, that you go from, single digit retention upwards to almost 80-90% of retention in the months following. And so I think that's part of the success of the program. And again, something else to note, I don't want to go too long here, but one of our sister partners that was part of our national cohort, they've been implementing this in the state of Florida, and they work very extensively with the military, and in fact, some of their government contracts that they have, they are basically ordering their couples to go to this kind of training. And I think when you think about their lifestyle, when the military, when they're going into getting training, or even if it's police or fire or whatnot, a lot of times they take a person and they strip away, all of the distractions in their life when they're going through basic training, and they're basically building them up brick by brick from scratch, from the ground up. And of course, I've never gone through basic training or anything like that, but from what I've heard and investigated, there could be a relational component to that, and I know that they have things like that regarding team building. But when they are built up in those ways, it's for the purpose of that group, whether it be the military, so they're building a weapon for the military. But when they come out of there, they struggle with relationships because they've never really been trained on that. So they've been built from the ground up, but they've kind of neglected to hit their relational needs. And so a lot of times they will struggle with their spouses or their family members or close friends and whatnot. And I think that's where a program like Adventures in Marriage can come in, and why it does so well is it teaches them how to communicate better with their loved ones and the people that matter most in their lives. And so they're missing that component. They've started at the bottom. They've been built up. Now they struggle, and then but they've never been trained in that area on how to deal with those relationships. And so there is a need for them to learn how to build strong, healthy, successful relationships. And that's where we come in, and we can help with local partners. We can help with the state to help craft or design something specific for a particular area, because every area has its own little culture that they have. And so I just, want to thank everyone for their time in hearing me out. And if there's any way that Vanguard Marriage and Family Advocates can be of assistance in helping our high-risk marriages in the state of Mississippi, I would definitely welcome a conversation from any of you.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor, anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, just to thank everyone. And, we all know how important family life is for our own personal mental health, as well as just the mental health of ourselves, how the impact that can be when we're not healthy, the impact that can be on the family. So we're here today to talk about how to build out these strong support systems for military people. I would encourage you to think about, okay, well, how can we begin where people are with their families, with their marriages, and to let you know that there are resources out there. There's the TANF funding. There are also additional pots of federal money for this. And there are providers like Jerry's group, Vanguard, they're doing this work in communities, and they're happy to serve as a resource for our military families. So with that, we can take any questions. My email is Jameson Taylor, JamesonTaylor @afa.net. If you have questions that come to you later, you can just go ahead and email me. And I can also get the questions over to Jerry, unless you want to share your email real quick, Jerry.
Sure. My email is Jerry with a J @vanguardmfa.org, VANGUARDMFA.org. Jerry @vanguardmfa.org. Thank you, Jameson. And yeah, if that's too long for you, just Jameson can get me any communication that you might need.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of y'all. I know y'all have to go, and so I want to kind of like do kind of a closing remark with that, is that my plan is to reintroduce the same legislation that we did last year, but I'd like to, whenever we have our next meeting, go ahead and have that drafted, have the task force look at it and see if there's some tweaks that we need to make or anything like that. So, Mr. Jerry, appreciate your time. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Jameson, appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
I can be available for a little bit longer if there's a need for that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank y'all. Well, we have Representative Hall here with us. Want to say any words before we move on to the next item?
Hey, good morning. Good to see you all again, gentlemen, and the rest of the team that's coming in. It's good to be with you again. Please excuse my tardiness, just kind of working through. Had to get the family set before I got here, but we're doing important work, and I'm looking forward to continuing to have more progress on this. So thank you.
Okay, so next on our agenda, we have Claire Durst and Chairman Creekmore. I don't know if you want to give an introduction, if you can give an introduction, but I'm very interested in what we're about to hear. So Chairman Creekmore, if you will, let us know how you got in contact. And I apologize to Dr. Durst, and what y'all have been talked about in the past.
Thank you, Senator Tate. Look, we began this iBegain journey back in the spring, and Dr. Recor and Claire Durst have been alongside me the whole time. And what we'd like to do is we'll start with Claire. No, I would like to start with Dr. Recor and kind of give you all the science and educate y'all on what iBegain does and how it will kind of reset the brain and how it helps our veterans. And then we'll pass it on to Claire. And then I would like to close with a description of how we're going to do the legislations, if that's okay. We'll start with Dr. Recor.
Sounds wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you all. I want to move as quickly as I can and be helpful. If I start talking about receptors, eyes will glaze over. This would be not useful. So just quickly, we're talking about ibogaine. It's a plant shrub derived out of Gabon, Africa. It's got psychedelic properties. So what folks know about it is that it's psychedelic medicine used in the Gabonese culture. And more recently, many veterans have moved to it. And because of its psychedelic properties, it was considered a controlled substance. So right now, the DEA has it as a Schedule I substance, which means no therapeutic benefit. It connects to current veterans issues because more than half the folks in this room have deployed. The military has done a fantastic job spending billions of dollars to get helmets and neck protectors and flak vests. By the time you walk out the door, you look like a half robot. All the gear's 30 pounds, which is good because if you get shot with a 7.62 round, you don't die. But when an IED goes off, your head's protected. You don't bleed, but your injuries are internal. And based on current data, it's something like for folks that have returned from deployment, it's 4-to-1 suicide to KIA for veterans. So the misery of these conflicts has much less to do with frontline physical trauma, but what happens to folks when they're trying to get home and reintegrate. There have been handfuls of folks, veterans, that have gone to Mexico and some other places to get treatment with Ibogaine. And Stanford, the best data here, this is all early data, the best data here took 30 Navy SEALs, all of whom were diagnosed with TBI and severe PTSD. So all of these guys were really struggling. By the way, if you haven't seen In Waves and War on Netflix yet, strongly recommend. It dropped on the 3rd. Chairman Creekmore and I saw this when we went and talked to some folks in Aspen, but it really tells a story of how beneficial Ibogaine can be. So you take these 30 veterans who are nearly completely dysfunctional, and you give them 1 dose of Ibogaine, the standard protocol that folks received at these treatment centers, and then you follow them immediately, and then another month, then follow them out 6 months. 29 of the 30 were not diagnosable with TBI. Now, for any clinicians in the room, traumatic brain injury is extremely difficult to treat. The mechanism by which this gets treated with Ibogaine still is unclear, but from a clinical standpoint, Ibogaine is, well, we'll call it's promiscuous, which means it affects a lot of receptors, which is different than like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So like Prozac, we know it's working on serotonin reuptake. Ibogaine works on many factors. Among them is a glial-derived neurotropic factor, which just means that it helps the brain reorganize and regrow. That seems to be part of the theory of why it works on TBI. But then none of the veterans were diagnosable with PTSD on the back end of the Ibogaine treatment too. So even though it's really early data, the anecdotal information is that veterans who've reached the end of what the VA has to offer in terms of medicines are now starting nonprofit organizations to pay for other veterans to go get this treatment in another country. Okay, so access to this is a major problem. Like you're either going to be a felon for trying to get access, or you can go to Mexico and get the treatment you actually need for the things that we actually know are affecting you. And so the important thing, I think I'm gonna defer to Claire to lay this out, is in conversations about how to get folks possible access to Ibogaine. Number one, the narrative can become, the guy from DMH came in and was saying we need to decriminalize all psychedelic medicine. Nothing could be further from the truth. These medicines have risk. Ibogaine, by the way, if not done in a properly controlled setting, has a risk of cardiac toxicity. So the Stanford studies have shown really no change in EKG when administered with magnesium IV and monitored, right? So no problems there, but there's a 1 in 300 to 1 in 500 chance if someone takes Ibogaine without proper supervision, they could die from a torsade de pointe, a cardiac rhythm abnormality. And the other piece is that when folks receive Ibogaine, it's got to be properly integrated. So you would, to get this right, you really do need clinicians who know what they're doing so that you've got your pre-screening issues ahead of time. So you need to understand what medicines folks are receiving, and there's ways to look at databases and make sure that the medicines they claim to be receiving, they are receiving. You need to understand their mental health history. For obvious reasons, folks who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, one of these psychotic disorders, there would be the risk might outweigh the benefits in those situations. You would want to look at an EKG, right? You want to make sure they don't have rhythm abnormalities before you start. But with proper safeguards in place, this is proven to be extremely beneficial and safe for folks.
I don't want to get ahead. I have a question.
Yes, please.
Is it in the process of going through the FDA approval stuff, and what's the timeline on that?
It's a great question. I'll defer the legal questions to Chairman Creekmore. We've both been participating, and there's a large movement to get Ibogaine completely regulated, and to get it, fundamentally, you're talking about a medicine that was inappropriately put on the Schedule I list, right? And so the ask isn't that we legalize something that we've known to be harmful and not therapeutic. This was a mistake that was made 50 years ago, and so we're aiming to remedy it. There are partners in political circles who are extremely invested in this. Chairman Creekmore and I spent some time with Governor Rick Perry from Texas, who has said innumerable times he's spending the rest of his life getting people access to this medicine, right? He's all in. He will tell you his story about it. And he's pretty much my best friend now. There is a lot of energy behind this. Chairman Creekmore and I have talked a lot about this. We hope that we can, sometimes Mississippi agrees to things later after everyone has sort of already sorted out. My hope, and I think Chairman Creekmore's hope, is that we can be part of the leaders here in getting folks access. So I think I've said as much as I'm going to say about the medical piece. The paradigm that I just want to lay out here is, we've got this medicine that clearly has early benefit. If there was ever a medicine that you would say, you think about some of the laws we've passed in the last couple of years with the right to try that exclude all Schedule I substances, I would not be in support of decriminalization of all psychedelics, but there are statutory frameworks that have licensing agencies in state governments take care of training and credentialing and safe management of these substances. So we're not far off getting folks access to these medicines, and Mississippi could lead the way. And then, instead of requiring that folks go to another country with standards that are questionable. Really, the truth is that there's a couple places in Mexico that do this well. But since Governor Perry and Brian Hubbard went on Rogan and talked about Ibogaine, the wait times are 6-9 months. It's a real challenge to get into treatment there.
So let me ask you.
Yes, sir.
At Stanford, how was Ibogaine? Am I saying that right? Ibogaine? How was
Ibogaine.
it administered? Did you say it was an IV or
Oral. So it's an extract from the plant medicine, and these guys take a single dose, and then their medical facilities there, they get an IV with magnesium just to stabilize the cardiac muscle and to make sure conduction continues to go. And there's medical staff on site that tend to folks 24 hours a day, and facilitators who, if someone starts having a hard time, they've done this so many times that they're able to redirect.
I wanted to take notes, but I know I was going to miss something every time I do
I'll
that.
come talk to you however many times.
No, you're not leaving here without my contact info and vice versa. So we had 29 out of 30 combat veterans take this. 29 out of 30 saw reversal.
You just can't believe the data when you look at it. When Dr. Nola Williams showed us this data in in Aspen, it was just, it's not to be believed. Now the numbers are small, so other medicines in the past have showed initial promise. Rarely do they show this kind of promise. But I think what we're advocating for now is primarily research access, but equally important to me is access in general, right to try for this medicine.
So that was how many years ago? This
This
study?
is 24. The study was 24,
Okay,
very recent.
fresh,
Mhm.
okay. So where are we, and you may not know the answer to this, somebody in this room does, or on Zoom. Where are we when we unschedule one medical marijuana? Are there any other hoops that we have to jump through prior that maybe marijuana had already jumped through as opposed to Ibogaine?
Yeah, I would defer to Chairman Creekmore and the lawyers to answer those questions, but I do know that there are frameworks in other states that have sorted all that out, right? So you have, for example, Colorado that has established clinical facilitators, which means you're talking about folks who are licensed physicians, licensed nurse practitioners, social workers, nurses who facilitate these things. You got folks like Claire, who is the medical director at an Ibogaine facility that could lay out what these standards could look like. So in terms, I know we did this with medical marijuana, which I think is probably of benefit to us now that we're considering pursuing this. I think the question is going to be whether this committee would support continued research and access to things like Ibogaine is the ask today.
I have 1,000 more questions, but we don't have the time. But go ahead. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Recor, for your testimony regarding the treatment plan. Because you're saying folks are going down to Mexico in order to get the treatment. Is this a one and done type administration and then they're good, they're healed? Or is this a continual type administration of the drug? Can you talk through
Yes.
the treatment plan, I guess?
Yes, it's a fantastic question. So on the front end, so these are not inexpensive treatments. So you're talking to get to Mexico, not including your own flight. It's a 3-day series, and it's going to be between $6,000 and $7,000. Okay. You've got Chairman Creekmore. Are you mentioning go ahead.
Yeah, we've got a handout that should be available to y'all that shows the traditional treatments versus Ibogaine. It's a financial comparison for addiction. And Claire may be able to weigh in since she's on the front lines administering it now.
So what we're looking at is you can see in the financial comparison, it lists a year of weekly supportive services. So first of all, the way we discovered Ibogaine was something that possibly could be useful was a heroin addict took it in an attempt to get high in the 60s and just discovered that he didn't want heroin anymore. Okay, so is now functional because he doesn't want opiate. So for addiction, this is something that's been happening behind closed doors for 60 years. You can see here this 1 year of weekly supportive services. What you see with any of the psychedelic treatments is you give someone the medicine and immediately there's a reorganization of their dopamine pathways, meaning what makes them excited. And if previously opiates make you excited, or if your fear response was tuned into every possible thing, you see a diminution of that. But then if you return home to the exact same conditions that you were in, and you've got no follow-up, and you've got this recent reorganization of how you conceptualize reality, and you've got no one there to integrate with you the experience you just had or what you're aimed at or what you're going through, then you will see a reduction in the improvement. But there are plenty of people who have gone back for another round to get reoriented. And the documentary lays it out well. And I asked Dr. Williams, the lead researcher in the studies, the Ibogaine experience itself is unpleasant, right? So the story is pretty familiar among all the guys and the women that experience it. You return to parts of your life that you need to reevaluate, that have affected you in ways that you don't quite understand, that animate your current decision making. And so you can imagine that if you think about what has occurred on the worst day of your life that you have boxed away and you say, I swear I'll sort that out later, you can imagine it's unpleasant going back to that. But the healing that results in the reprocessing appears to be long lasting in a way that current therapies don't have on offer. So does that answer your question?
Yes, no, I appreciate it. I would like to talk about, and I think Chairman Creekmore, you're probably going to segue into this, but the implementation in Mississippi, or the legalities, or how you see the process unfolding here inside the state if we do go this route.
Yes, sir. And I was going to say mine to the end to discuss how the bill's going to be framed up and how we can get access to Ibogaine in Mississippi, the quickest route. So if you may just let me wait till after Claire's finished, and then I'll bring up how the bill's going to work.
Yeah, that's fine. Any more questions for Dr. Recor? Yes, Senator.
As I understand Schedule 1, the drugs that are on Schedule 1 have been determined to have no medical use, and therefore they're just plain illegal to possess. And marijuana found its way to Schedule 1. The result of which was there was just never any research into marijuana because it was illegal to do the research. And it's sort of a catch-22. You can't find out if it's got any medical use because the law says it doesn't have any medical use, and you'll go to jail if you try to find out. I would argue that the listing of marijuana had a lot more to do with politics than medicine, but we'll get back to that later. But it would seem the first step would be to drop Ibogaine to Schedule 2 or whatever, to make it easier to do research. Is there an effort to do that? Do you know where that stands?
I think I'll punt that to Chairman Creekmore, but yes, the answer is all of these pursuits are occurring right now, and at the federal level and at state levels. I mean, this is what we're seeing, but it's to your point. That's exactly why this is such a difficult process. It's like, do you start pursuing this while you still are Schedule 1? Well, the answer is, like, you have people who are suffering. So if you're if your aim is to help folks that are suffering, then, you know, you have to start somewhere. And the fact that things remain Schedule 1, I mean, you can actually get licensed to do research on Schedule 1 substances, and Stanford's a place. There's a couple of places that are able to do that kind of research. And I think part of this could be, why not us?
Well, it would seem to be that the step that should be taken is to do the research. I think I've asked this question before. The FDA only applies to the United States. Isn't there somebody somewhere who's done studies into this that are clinical trials, or the usual thing one would do for a new drug?
The typical response to that about data is that sometimes clinicians in the United States are less inclined to believe data that is gathered in other countries, even though it's done within reasonable standards. So there's a lot more information than just the Stanford studies that we could look at in making decisions about what's the right next step with Ibogaine. If it's okay with you, Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Claire to let us know what she has on offer today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. Thank you, Sam, for having me here. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Claire Durst. So I'm a registered nurse of 18 years of emergency and psychiatric medicine experience, trauma, and functional neurology care. I'm a fourth generation Mississippian. I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, graduated nursing school at UMMC, and have been traveling the world working as a nurse, and I have spent the last several years working directly with special forces veterans and civilians and clinical teams using iboga and ibogaine in the context of PTSD, TBI, addiction, and depression. And I have a much deeper love for this passion of mine. I'd like to share briefly with you that I had joined the Air Force as a flight nurse in Mississippi, and then I sustained a traumatic brain injury while in training before I could get fully into my military career. It stopped before it started. And then I was completely disabled for 6 years. My physicians in Jackson quit on me in 3 months. They didn't have support or a roadmap for me to recovery, and they offered to complete my disability paperwork and give me all the medications in the world, but that was it. So I spent the next 6 years of my life lost. I had poured already 10 years of my life into Western medicine, and it could not help me. So during that 6-year period, I went to 10 different states and 2 different countries. And at year 6, I was functional. They had told me I would never be a nurse again. I would never walk right again or talk right again. And of course, you couldn't tell by the outside. My exterior looked fine, but it was all, like Dr. Recor mentioned, it's all on the interior, similar to exactly what veterans experience. So by that 6th year, I had put myself back through nursing school just to be a nurse again and was successful. And then I found ibogaine. I still had symptoms. I still suffered from the tinnitus, the ear ringing, the brain fog, the mood instability, the headaches, vision problems, all the things. I was in a black hole still that there looked like there was no exit from. Ibogaine helped me with that. I went down to Mexico and I did the medicine. And I really wasn't a believer, honestly, at the time. I actually had started working in the clinic before and took over as a medical director. I sat with hundreds and hundreds of vets before I decided to take the plunge and do it myself because, of course, modern medicine made me a skeptic. But at this point, I had let anybody poke or prod on me anywhere they wanted to if there was some promise that it would get me just 1% better. I've never seen anything as transformative as ibogaine. And that's in 18 years of being in the roughest emergency rooms, detox programs, psychiatric programs, helping veterans and civilians from all over the US. It is absolutely the most transformative experience. I will say it is not a magic cure, but for veterans with PTSD, moral injury, addiction, treatment-resistant depression, it has been a meaningful turning point when nothing else worked. What we consistently see is, like Dr. Recor mentioned, the neurological reset that also increases the GDNF, the neuroplasticity, the interruption of the trauma loops that play in your head. It's a pattern interrupter. And this is also how it works for addiction is often when you are addicted to substances, whether it's alcohol or opiates. I myself was taking sleeping medications that my doctors had no intentions of me ever coming off because to protect me from having seizures, I needed to sleep. And I viewed this as just my daily medication regimen and found myself taking it everywhere with me. And then I knew it was a problem. When I woke up from ibogaine, I never took another sleeping pill. Never had to have one. This pattern interrupter keeps you from going through withdrawals. And so if you're an addict and you're really ready to give up that substance and you want to change your life, you wake up with no cravings. And that's exactly how the heroin addict discovered it. He woke up and he wasn't in withdrawals. And that's one of the hardest pieces with addiction. No matter what substance it is, it's the withdrawal and the physical pain on top of all the emotional instability that it creates. So it interrupts these cravings. And then you have this very deep psychological processing. And like he mentioned, you review the trauma from a new perspective. You often don't have the emotional charge with it, and you're able to change your viewpoint, and it re-registers in your brain. The Stanford study even showed that it took 1 year off of your brain in age at the conclusion of the 30 vets that they treated. So I think what's important to know, especially want to make sure that the VA hears this, that safety is always the first priority. And there are these 3 non-negotiable pillars when it comes to safety, and that's the cardiac safety. Ibogaine has a known side effect to prolong a wave in the heart. But the way that we mitigate this is through a screening process, and we do complete EKGs. We have monitoring on site, lab draws. We give the IV fluids. We have the medical team in place. It's just very important that we have high standards in place for the clinicians that are going to administer this. And just as we mitigate risk every day in medicines, whether it's protocols for the OR, protocols for chemotherapy, we still have to get consent forms. We don't know that we can never guarantee 100% that you're going to walk out of a procedure. There is no guarantee to any of this. But the great thing about Ibogaine is we know exactly what to expect and we know how to treat it. Then there's the trauma-informed, veteran-informed care. It's very, very important that we have our trauma-informed therapists who work with special forces and vets and their families with the proper integration. So you go down for treatment. Before you get there, I know you'd asked about the treatment plan. The treatment plan looks like a multifaceted process. So I like to cut it into pieces of a pie. So 25% of this is the pre-work. So that would be a medical screening with a professional, lab testing, EKGs, functional medicine, genetic testing to make sure that there's nothing in your body that biologically does not contradict you from going through the medicine. So we do this screening on the front end. You have sessions with what we like to call an integration coach or a therapist who is trauma and psychedelically informed. You do preparation sessions with them to get in the right mindset, to understand what you're about to process, and to make sure that emotionally that you are ready to handle this. And not every person needs Ibogaine. There are some other options, and this is a big part of the screening also. You don't just go do it to do it, or you don't just say, oh, I want it. You have to be screened and you have to be approved to go. That's a big piece of the project. So then 25% of it is also the medication administration. So like we said, it's given orally in a pill form. We have you on a heart monitor. We are giving you IV fluids. They help regulate the potassium intake in the heart and expulsion from the heart. We monitor you 48 hours after. We also continue to do EKGs on you and make sure that you're back to your baseline. And so it usually is a one and done. We do have people that like to come back because they've worked through so much trauma and taken care of issues at home with their families and with their career and their lifestyle. And a lot of people like a second reset sometimes, just because you're not the same person when you come back and go through it a second time. But it definitely does not warrant that you have to do that. That's usually a choice that people are allowed to make, and they are allowed to have another dose. We do see the majority of people come through for one treatment, and it is treatment in a weekend. But the third part is the most important piece. This is the integration. And what I mean by integration is you go down to Mexico, you receive the medicine, you open up all these pathways, you reprocess your trauma. Now you have to integrate this new perspective into your life. And like Dr. Recor said, you're going back into the environment where you might have sustained trauma. And so it's very, very important to understand through the help of therapeutic support, the coaches, the therapist, that you're able to integrate and readapt and make other lifestyle changes once you get home. a big piece of the Stanford study, and this is also in an article by Nature, the journal, that Ibogaine opens up a window of neuroplasticity in the brain, and it allows you to put new habits, new patterns into play while this window is open and these things absorb. So think your brain becomes like a sponge, and you're able to do all these things and make all these changes in a matter of a few weeks, where it would be more difficult with this window closed off. So having access to that is a gift, and that is a key component to the integration being successful. We also have family programs. I know you mentioned the TANF funding earlier, and I love that you're treating the full spectrum of the family, because we were sending Navy SEALs, Green Berets down and treating them and sending them back home. Well, they had asked for forgiveness and they had recognized, things about their life, and then their partners were really struggling. They're really struggling to be in a relationship and in a family environment where they were free of all their demons and they were making better life choices. And so we started treating the spouses, and also Gold Star spouses who had lost a spouse in war or to suicide. And so by treating the wife and the husband, vice versa, we found that the outcomes were even better because they were able to work in unison together. And so I think that's a very important piece to mention as well. So the veterans that I've supported, I still speak to them daily. I'm actually down in San Diego with the filmmakers and the veterans that were in the In Waves and War movie. We just had a veteran gathering down here, and they're all still going strong. It's undeniably, it needs to be a tool in our toolbox for sure. And there is a correct way to do it. I'm actually part of the organization called Americans for Ibogaine, who is a nonprofit that's been formed to help get this passed. The state level, they are working on all of the federal level and working with the DEA on this. We're trying to make movement here. And I'm part of the team that's actually going to set and write all the clinical standards. So knowing that this can be done safely and effectively in the right setting and the right place, I think it's well worth exploring the option to bring it to Mississippi.
Thank you, Ms. Claire. Any questions from anybody at all, whether you're on the force or not? Go ahead.
Ms. Durst, thank you for your testimony. That was extremely powerful for you to share your story, and quite remarkable, I might add. I'm curious to know, just on the back end, right? So after the administration of the drug for the veteran or the patient recipient, what structure do you think would increase that likelihood of success and not having a relapse when they reintegrate back into the community? Is it weeks, months, years of counseling? Is it counseling and marriage counseling? What does that look like in order to bolster that success rate?
Yeah, I think what the plan that Sam was showing you earlier was a 12-month plan with follow-up. I think saying a year of integration is very appropriate. And also, this is an individualized approach to some extent. Not everyone is the same. Not everyone is going to react the same. So I think having that 1 year as a cushion, you're going to learn new tools also, throughout this process as to how to make your life better, how to implement these changes. And I think that does take a period of several months. The goal is that once you get months down the road, then I think it's a touch and go with how much you need as far as sessions or what you're working on. But we offer, in a lot of the clinics, we have community calls, which is a huge thing to help integrate, especially with our military families. It's having that community, because you're so used to the camaraderie of check-in calls once a week or once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever that looks like. We build out those programs to help support you no matter what, because life is going to ebb and flow regardless. Things are always going to come up, and it's learning how to navigate them better is the goal, giving you the tools. So there is not a need for another dose of medicine. So I'd say a year safely. And then I would definitely say the follow-up is monthly, whether that's the form of community calls and integration calls or support gatherings, networks, all of those things.
If I can add, without getting too weird, Claire, is it accurate to say that most of the folks that have this experience would say that the medicine knows what you need?
Without being too weird, it is.
No.
He's exactly right. It knows exactly what you need.
So to answer, the question is a perfectly formulated one, especially in the context of asking when you're thinking about typical mental health treatments. But most of the time, the medicine does the work it needs to do at the level of the individual in a way that you just don't typically see with traditional medicine. But you also don't want to give someone such a powerful medicine and not be there. So when Claire's talking about individualized support, if someone's having a hard time with this new way their brain is working, it would be malpractice to not be available. But that can look, it says a year. Very few people will need a year of continued integration. It'll just be like, hey, how are the kids? That it's that sort of level is what this is all anecdotal, right? But most of the folks will say, oh, you're right. The medicine knew exactly what I needed. And I'm still learning 6 months later. So, fundamentally to the clinicians, it's like, hey, get out of my way. I'm doing great. Right.
Right. Exactly. And it's definitely not something that you want to do again. It is hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it's used traditionally in the Bwiti tribes in Africa. It is rites of passage for their women, their children, their fathers. This has been used for centuries. It's been around forever, and it really does know what you need. I know that sounds so woo-woo. Believe me, as a clinician going down there and they said, oh, you're going to sit and take this pill and you're going to look at your life differently, I would not have believed it until I did it myself. But the benefits are just undeniable.
All right, Chairman Creekmore, you wanted to close?
I have one question. real
Yes,
quick.
sir. Thank you. And just to be clear, Ibogaine is Schedule 1, and Senator Bryan is exactly right. It got caught up in a political movement in the 70s and got swept. That's right, Senator
Heard in
Bryan.
your calls,
You're
Chairman.
right. And this is being recorded, so you're on the record for being right. But Schedule 1,
It's all going to be downhill from that point.
to be Scheduled 1, a drug has to have no medicinal value and has to be addictive. Ibogaine has medicinal value and is not addictive. It's not something you take for recreational use. It has to be done, as Claire's so eloquently pointed out, in a hospital or clinic setting, and it's monitored by doctors and nurses the entire time. And so what our goal is to how can we get Mississippians treated in Mississippi as soon as possible? And that avenue is through FDA trials, which can be very expensive. The application is arduous to begin with. But what we'd like to do is partner with other states that are doing it. Texas has passed an Ibogaine bill, and they're applying for the FDA trial. We can join them in their trial. Texas put forward $50 million to start this. And so what the bill would look like would be a partnership with Texas. A pharmaceutical company that provides Ibogaine would be chosen. They're required to match what our state puts forward. So my goal is to offer $5 million from the from the opioid settlement funds that the legislature controls 15% of. And so the pharmaceutical company that was chosen would put up another $5 million. And then we'd also partner with a hospital or clinic in Mississippi. That could be the VA, it could be UMMC. And so they would administer, they would have the $10 million, and then the FDA trials would begin. This is the quickest way we can get Mississippians this treatment. And so through that process, hopefully we could get Ibogaine reduced from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, then to Schedule 3. The FDA trials could continue to treat more people. We actually have, just like Claire, we have Mississippi veterans traveling out of the country to be treated. We've had them at hearings testifying, and so Mississippians are actually receiving this treatment abroad. And so through this bill, we could get them treated in Mississippi's. That's the quickest route we can take, is through the Ibogaine initiative. That I will drop it on the House, and I've had a couple of senators that said they would drop it on the Senate, a companion bill. Senator Bryan is not committed to that one yet. But that's what the bill will look like.
One question, if you may. The Mississippians who are traveling out of state or out of the country, are they paying out of pocket?
There are groups, and Claire's part of them, that raise money across the country. One organization's Vets, and they raise money. I know one of the Mississippians who testified, he paid some himself, but a lot of it was raised through donations.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, Chairman Creekmore, if you will, get me Ms. Claire's information where I can be in contact with her, because this is something that I really want to pursue, and I'm about a degree away from committing to you to have a companion bill on the Senate side. I really am.
Well, I would love this committee's endorsement at the very least on this initiative that we're trying to get passed in Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, okay. Well, look, you have my information. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. I'll make sure that whenever we have our next meeting, that everybody is in on the loop on that and have an invite, whether it be in person or via Zoom. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Okay. That was a good bit, but I think that's worth going down. Okay, just next on our agenda, I have Kevin and Wendy Wittenberg with Soldiers Freedom Outdoors. If y'all will just let us know what it is that y'all do, and what where you've been in Florida and now in Mississippi.
Correct. Again, Kevin Wittenberg with Soldiers Freedom Outdoors. I'm a combat veteran volunteer. Have been with the organization for about 4 years, and currently this year we just got our own 501c3. But we're the same umbrella organization that's been going for over 14 years. It started out with Daniel DeMarco out of his front yard trying to help our service members. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody in here that served in the military, because if it wasn't for our military, we wouldn't have the freedoms we have now. So again, thank you, especially our Vietnam veterans, because they did not get any of the support that when they came back. But again, I said I'm a combat veteran. I did 4 deployments, 3 of them were combat, 2 Afghanistan, 1 Iraq, and Kosovo was like a borderline, combat supportive type of deal. I'm a veteran that's lived through the suicidal thoughts, situations, stuff like that, the marriage problems. I've lived there. And first and foremost, I can tell you about a veteran that's, been through some of that stuff, is you have to give that veteran, that service member, let me rephrase that, because this organization is for every service member, everybody that raised their right hand. You have to get them to get them a purpose to continue. If you do not give them a purpose to continue, whether it's family or whatnot, they will not try to strive to go from there. So anyways, this organization gives them a purpose by multiple outdoor activities. We do blacksmithing, beekeeping. It's just ecotherapy, hunting, fishing, and it's very open. It's all volunteer-based organization, so nobody draws a paycheck out of it. There's a lot. You actually have gotten a little bit of the brief on the organization where we're at. We're in Camp Maridel. We're buying the old Girl Scout camp that's there on adjacent property. It's 170 acres, 2 lakes, 26 natural springs. So it's a lot. We try to push them there. She can go a little bit more in depth, Ms. Cindy, about what we do and a little bit more on track. But
I'm Cindy Wittenberg. I'm actually the retreat coordinator for Florida, and I serve on their executive board. I'm also the president of the Mississippi location, and I've been with the organization volunteering about 6.5 years now. So our main focus is mental health and providing a safe location that our veterans, service members and their families can come to start the healing process. We're not doctors, we're not therapists, we don't do any medication, and whatever happens, we stay confidential, like nothing is reported back to the VA or anything like that. We offer weekend retreats. Our vision is to provide a safe, holistic place for our service members and veterans to begin healing, and our retreats are that safe place. We offer monthly weekend retreats that provide therapy by nature. Nature brings calm, balance, and connection into the lives of our heroes. And it has been proven that connecting with nature can also improve depression, lower blood pressure, improve self-esteem, and just help gain resilience. So during our retreat, our warriors have the opportunity to do multiple things: hiking, fishing, horseback riding. We offer different activities, but they can also just sit and relax, because sometimes they come and they just need what I call a brain break. And we're just really striving to, our mission is to heal the hidden wounds of war, PTSD, TBI, everything that falls under that, isolation, anger, depression, just feeling like they're just lost. And we really strive just to provide that place for them to come to start that healing process.
This organization is for all service members. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go to combat. You don't have to have a Purple Heart. There's a lot of organizations that have, stereotypes. This organization is extremely open. And also it doesn't matter what state they come from, what part, where once they make it to our retreat locations, everything else is free. The food, the lodging, everything, all the activities, and it's based on what they want to choose to do. So there's a lot with the organization that and we're willing to grow too. So like our Florida location is doing beekeeping. We're trying to get that activities going here. We're trying to get an equine director on our property. We don't have an equine director. We have the barn that's out there from the old Girl Scout camp. So it's just multiple things that we can grow with volunteers and with support. Good.
Everything that we do, like Kevin said, is free. Like, we don't charge anything, and we can only do that through the donations that come in, through our sponsorships and the support of the community, because without all of you and everyone else, we just can't do this. And we've always said that we hate that an organization like us is needed, because the mental health, stigma is just, it's so bad. But we are dedicated to hopefully changing that in the near future.
Where you guys?
I was gonna say, I appreciate y'all coming. I don't know if it was a God thing or what, but I just happened to run into Kevin and Sydney and Wendy, and we were at a city
Cindy.
council meeting
Cindy.
for so what now?
Cindy.
Cindy, my bad. I thought that's what it was, but then I looked down and it said.
No, you're probably thinking of me because I'm long-winded, so.
No, just happened to be at a Meridian City Council meeting, and I said, hey, we've got a meeting on November the 17th. I want y'all to come, and if anything, just to exchange some phone numbers, make some contacts. The work that they're doing, first of all, they get no paycheck out of this. Nobody does. Nobody gets anything out of this. You said there's around 200 acres, but about 12 of it has to stay cut, right? Somebody's cutting the grass there for free. And I don't know if y'all know this, but grass grows a lot in Mississippi, humidity over in Meridian at least. And so anyway, I'm going to work to try to see what we can try to do as far as get Lauderdale County and Meridian on board to try to support y'all financially, try to get some private donations. I don't know if there is or anything that the state can do, but we'll find out. But if anything, I just wanted y'all to be here to introduce yourselves, let it be known. I mean, y'all are doing God's work. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Chaplain, please.
Where is the camp? I missed the first part of your.
It's Camp Meridell. That's right here. That's been established since 1938 in Meridian.
Outside of Meridian,
Yes.
the old Girl Scout camp over there?
Correct.
Okay.
Plus the adjacent property. So it's a total of 170 acres there.
I think you hit on something that's absolutely critical. And one gap that I see, especially in Mississippi, when you talk about specifically National Guardsmen, is that purpose and community, right? Unlike being at a Fort Bragg or Fort Hood, where everyone is in the service, all the families are there together, they all mobilize together. We're kind of spread out across the 82 counties. And so when they're out of a drilling status or they get out of service, that community that they had prior to is largely lost. And so the purpose and the community piece, I think, is important. I know you have a location near Meridian. Where's your Florida location? And then can you talk about how y'all, I guess, what programs y'all do over the weekend, and then any possibility for expanding the scope of what you do or adding locations across Mississippi? Have y'all looked at any other sites?
It first off, it's all volunteers, so we're worked off of donations. So that's the biggest thing. Sometimes we'll have people donate a boat, so we'll do a fishing trip over the weekend, whether it's on the coast or, you know, in Florida or wherever the location's at. So we don't have boundaries on that. So anybody that wants to support. Another thing that I touched on that I forgot about earlier is that we've been working with the state, and we've been trying to talk with them from the G3 office, Colonel Robinson over there with First Sergeant Huffman. Trying to remember names. I'm sorry, I'm horrible with that. We've also been with Miss Andy, Lieutenant Johnson, I think it is, with the Yellow Ribbon reintegration process that we've been trying to push and change some stuff on that too, because they're only able to talk to the service members, which is National Guard Reserve, 90 days after they've already come back from deployment. That's too long. I'm mostly active duty. You know, when we came back from deployment, sorry to scroll on this, but we had 3 to 6 weeks of sitting down, going through all this reintegration stuff. And a lot of the National Guard reserves do not get that. So we've been trying to talk to them about, hey, you have basically a group setting when they're deployed. Why not go ahead and give them some of that reintegration information to the commanders down range? Because sometimes when those National Guard reserves come back, they're going to different units. And everybody that's been in the military, you know, when you suck it up and drive on type of deal, you know, you go to that next unit, the commander's going to ask, hey, how was it? The first thing you're going to say is, it was fine. Nothing happened. Regardless on how many passed away, whatever situations. So they don't know your mental status because you don't wear your scar on the outside. And this organization we've actually gone through a 2-day suicide assist program that's nationwide, which is awesome, because what it does is it teaches our people that go through those to keep your service members safe now and then work on it. And that's what this organization is assisting doing, is trying to keep them safe and to follow on. But anyway, sorry, she can go with the.
So to answer your question, our Florida location is in Melrose. It's near Gainesville. And that was, founded in 2011. They have about 350 acres. Our weekend programs, we do the monthly weekend retreats, and the activities included in those: hiking, fishing, hunting, horseback riding.
We're starting a woodworking shop.
And then we also do a blacksmithing program on the weekends. And that's where veterans can come in and they start with a raw piece of metal and they forge their own knife to take home. And sometimes they go home and they kind of start that. It gives them, like a trade, that they can move on with. We also do family days during the warmer months where we include the families, because family unity is very important. Our organization focuses more on the service member and veteran, but we do try to include the families and children as much as possible. And then we also have a Horses 101 program for military children ages 4 to 18. And we use Coyote Hills in Chunky, Mississippi. They're an equine rescue, and they help us out with that program, so we can do that monthly as well.
That's awesome. One thing I would also like y'all to consider, I know you've already talked with Yellow Ribbon Program and some other ones with the Guard, and Chaplain, you may have to get with the Guard and May can answer this, but what about just standard drill weekends? you know, how we normally do like the Christmas party or the Christmas drill in December or we do like 2 a year where we're not really doing heavy training, but instead go off-site to something like this where just for unit morale, and something along those lines. So how we can integrate people that are currently still in, and then also we have a transitioning piece when guys are getting out. I think they go down to Camp Shelby. Instead of going to Camp Shelby, go to something like this where they can kind of decompress and then also have that community as well. So I appreciate what y'all are doing.
So with that, we've already talked to, with the Yellow Ribbon, reintegration, we talked to Major General Kelly, General Ginn, I think his name is, quite a few sergeant majors and stuff like that. And we talked to them about doing squad level training on the property. You've got 170 acres out there. You can do a whole bunch of stuff for team building, get them off site, get them out of uniform a little bit and just go do little different stuff that's out there. There's 8 tree houses. You can do an off the grid reintegration weekend type of deal. You can live off the land. There's so much ideas out there that we can do. But we're trying to push towards a squad level building, because if you get them before they get to that point where they're suicidal, then that stops a lot of the medical and all the money processes there. So.
And they could probably use unit funds, MWR funds for that as well. So I think that would be great. Awesome.
Good deal. Well, I first met Kevin last crawfish season. He went to come get some crawfish from me, and I didn't know what was going on. And we did a little bit of a tour a few days ago, and then this past weekend, and just seeing everything that he does, I said, man, I'm sorry, I can't charge you for crawfish next time. I have to give that to you on the house if y'all do it again. So I appreciate all that y'all have done, and that's just me on a personal level. Any other questions before we move on with the agenda?
Well, if you don't mind, my wife, she's recently been writing some stuff up, and she wrote some stuff up, and you actually got to see a little bit on our organization. Our organization just not, it's not in our bylaws to house homeless veterans and stuff like that, but we had a homeless veteran reach out, going through issues and stuff like that. So we've been doing whatever we can to try to push the VA to try to help, and we haven't gotten any contact back to be able to help basically this homeless service member with his girlfriend and pet. But if you don't mind reading it, I know it's going to be emotional, but something she wrote about.
I knew he was going to do that.
Hmm.
You'll just have to bear with me because it's kind of been a rough week. I think this will kind of give you an insight onto into mental health and what our veterans struggle with, and then not just our veterans, but the volunteers that help as well.
Sorry.
Over the past week, and honestly the past several years, I've learned more than I ever expected about mental health and the silent battles people fight every single day. Mental health struggles don't show favoritism. They don't care about age, strength, rank, or past accomplishments. A child, a teenager, a parent, a friend, someone you love dearly may be struggling right now and you have no idea. We meet people every day who smile through the hardest days of their lives. People who appear strong, steady, and put together when inside they are barely holding on. And sometimes it takes only a small moment of kindness, a gentle word, a soft look, a stranger's compassion to keep someone from giving up. This past week tested my own mental health more than I expected. I felt the weight of doing everything I possibly could for someone I didn't even know, and still worrying it wasn't going to be good enough. That feeling is heartbreaking. My heart is for people, all people. And it hurts knowing I can't fix the world for every one of them. Sorry. But I remind myself every day that even the smallest act of kindness can give someone hope on their darkest day. And that hope matters, and it can be life-saving. The invisible wounds, those are the hardest ones, especially for our service members and veterans. These wounds isolate, they overwhelm, they convince a person that they don't matter and that they're alone and no one would understand. Anger, depression, trauma, these invisible storms can consume someone from the inside out. People on the outside often only see a moment, an outburst, a shutdown, a bad day. What they don't see is the war that veteran is fighting in their mind 24 hours a day. And when you love someone who carries that weight, it's nearly impossible not to carry some of it with them. It is hard not to take things personally, hard not to feel helpless when your best effort still doesn't feel like enough. And if you have a heart at all, it's almost impossible not to struggle right alongside them. The statistics tell a painful story. Nationwide, over 6,000 veterans die by suicide, and that was just in 2021. That's an average of 17 veterans every single day. In Mississippi alone, 86 veterans died by suicide between 2017 and 2021. Mississippi remains consistently above the national average for veteran suicide rates. And in 2023, the Department of Defense reported 492 service members lost to suicide. These are not numbers. These are people, human beings that have served, protected, and sacrificed. These are stories that should not have ended. And this is why I'm here. This is why we must all be here. At Soldiers Freedom Outdoors, we are fighting every day to bring hope back into the lives of our service members and veterans. We use nature, community, equine therapy, outdoor activities, and connection to create a safe place where invisible wounds can finally be acknowledged and healing can begin. And I want to be completely honest. What we do as volunteers is emotionally exhausting. There are days the weight is heavy, days you cry on the drive home, days you wonder if you did enough, days the hurt you witness feels like too much for one heart to hold. But then you remember your purpose, you remember your mission, and you remember the veteran who walked in broken and walked out with a spark of hope. You remember the family that found relief, and you remember the lives that have been changed. And you know deep in your heart, every ounce of effort is worth it. Because lives are being saved. Here in Mississippi, thousands of veterans are living with PTSD, depression, and trauma so deep that they often lack the words to explain it. Too many are fighting in silence. Too many believe no one cares. Too many don't know where to turn. But healing takes a village. It takes a community. It takes a state willing to stand up and say, we will not lose another one. And that's why your leadership, your decisions, and your commitment matter so deeply. Suicide prevention is not just a program. It's a promise to protect those who protected us. So today I want to leave you with this. If you're struggling or someone you love is struggling, know that you matter. Your life matters. Your story matters, and you are not meant to carry this alone. And to every volunteer, every provider, leader, every organization fighting this fight, please keep going. Some days are heavy, some days are frustrating, and some days it feels like your effort disappears in the dark, but it doesn't. What you do matters more than you know. Your work is changing lives, and your work is saving lives. Together we hold the line. Together we save lives. And together we can show every veteran, every service member, and every person that you are seen, you are valued, you are loved, and we are not letting you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that y'all do. I sure hope that here today there's more of a spotlight on what y'all do for y'all coming. So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fordyce, floor is yours.
I feel kind of strange at this setup. I got my back to more people than I'm facing, but I want to thank all of you for addressing this. This is such an all-encompassing type of issue and problem, and I want to thank you for trying to get your arms around it and try to handle it. Mississippi has been doing this for a long, long time. Does anybody know what the number one item on the 1900 budget for the state of Mississippi was? Prosthetic limbs for Civil War veterans. We've been doing this for a long time. And I'm glad to see that y'all are continuing that. A little bit of a background. I grew up in Vicksburg. I joined the Mississippi National Guard when I was in college. Graduated, got commissioned, went to Germany and served in the 3rd Infantry Division over there as an engineer, and then came back and joined the 20th Special Forces here. Served with PFC Puckett, and now I find myself having to call him sir. And then about 2000, I started meeting a lot of World War II, mainly veterans, and I started interviewing them and doing video captures of their interviews. And I thought I was just going to talk to a bunch of old guys. And next thing I knew, this was the most emotional thing I had ever done. And I'm listening to a audio book right now called The Wounded Generation. We all hear about the World War II veterans coming back to ticker tape parades and everything was all wonderful. Well, it wasn't. It was every bit as bad as what we are seeing today. The difference was, back in the time, 20% of the population was in uniform, and they had a lot of decompression time coming home. They had to come home on ships. It was Operation Magic Carpet that brought all of our soldiers home after World War II, and that took 16 months to complete, which means we still had people deployed in their combat areas in 1947, which is a little bit hard to imagine. But there was a lot of suicide back then as well. And I've talked to all of them. I've gone back and talked to my 90-year-old friends. None of them are around anymore, but they all told me, yes, they knew a lot of people that were struggling and a lot of people that had committed suicide. So I served for 13 years and my brother served for 6 years. We both love veterans while we were in. And so we have a nice hunting place up in Valley Park, and I just wanted to gather up some veterans and get them out of the house. I knew there were some guys that wanted to do that. And so I met a combat veteran. I'm not a combat veteran. I got out before all that shooting stuff started. We got activated for Desert Storm, but we didn't go over there. But I met a combat veteran by the name of Greg Williams. He was in E7, who was platoon sergeant, and his platoon was ambushed, and a bunch of the young kids were killed and killed or wounded, and he was wounded, medicaled out of the military. But he told me in that visit, he said, I could spend 12 hours with a PhD certified counselor, and but what I really need is an hour around the bonfire with 5 or 6 of my buddies that were there. And so I told him, well, we will provide the bonfire. And so Monday morning, I got my secretary to figure out how to start a not-for-profit. Today, there are over 45,000 veteran not-for-profits registered with the IRS. 45,000. There are a lot of them that are raising a lot of money and not doing much. There are a lot of organizations out there that are doing a very good job at working with our veterans. We have a recipe that's working very well. Not at all what we set out to do. We set out to take 5 or 6 guys deer hunting. That's all we wanted to do. And 5 minutes into our very first event, we're sitting around a big round table, my brother and I on either end of the table, and the veterans started working on each other and helping each other. One guy said, I got this problem at the VA. I can't get it solved. Another one said, no, you're talking to the wrong guy. You need to talk to this guy at the VA. He said, I didn't know they had that guy at the VA. My brother and I looked at each other and went, uh-oh. There is way more to this than deer hunting. A month later, I took 6 guys out to Colorado, and 5 minutes in, the exact same thing happened. And they were like they were on a team again. And they were, you know, this is 6 guys that never met each other, and yet they're just like their brothers again. So I have spent a lot of time. I was never in combat, never been shot at, never shot at anybody, but spent a lot of time studying these problems and meeting with these guys. Our audience is post 9/11 Purple Heart veterans. We've got just over 800 Purple Hearts on our in our database, and the best definition I have ever heard of PTSD is it is a wound to the soul that must be healed. And so we are more of a family organization. Once you get in, we're real bad about never wanting to let you go. We've got a lot of volunteers around the country. We've got veterans from all 50 states. Today, we're running 40-something events around the country every year. We've run events in, I think, 35 states right now. And we have a lot of volunteers for all of that. And what I have found is the American people, and especially the people of Mississippi, are very caring and they love veterans, but they don't know how to say thank you for your service. That's a hard one. And the people that volunteer to help these veterans are saying thank you for your service, and it means the world to them. We are now working more and more with spouses, with couples, and we have veterans are now leading all of our events. We're no longer doing it. We are setting up a safe environment for them to do their own work. And we've got some boundaries, and we're kind of acting as rudders, but the veterans, the combat wounded veterans, are actually running all of our events now. We have leadership training for them, and then they go out and actually run the event. And it has meant more to those guys that are leading it because they are able to help their brother. In World War II, in their out processing, they were told, do not ever talk about anything you saw or did, because you're just going to freak people out and they're not going to understand it. And they did a very good job of holding all of that in, which is absolutely the worst thing they could do. I had one of the veterans at 90-something years old. He was a B-17 navigator and was shot down, spent 800 days as a POW with the Germans. And he said that the whole crew of 10 spent their whole life communicating with each other. And if any of them had a problem, they would go to their crew, very tight-knit group, and they could talk through it and work through it. And he was the last survivor on that crew. And he said, I had not had a nightmare in 10 years. And the night the last one died, my nightmare started back again. And he used to come talk to our guys every chance he got. And he said, be advised, this is never going to stop. This is something that's going to be with you forever. And you've got to figure out how to deal with it. And so we're working on a lot of things right now. We call one of them Bonfire 2.0, trying to figure out how we can be relevant 10, 20, 30 years down the road. We're starting to get guys together with Vietnam veterans because the post 9/11 veterans are starting to look up going, hey, that's going to be me in a couple of years. And what we're doing with them today is not necessarily what they're going to need in in 10, 20, or 30 years, and we want to still be here and be relative in that time frame. We call each one of them 4 times a year. We've got a volunteer base that calls and just talks to them and just sees how everything is going. But after our event, they leave that weekend with 5 new battle buddies, 5 new confidants that they know they can call if anything is wrong, if anything is bad. We've got 800 veterans, and in 13 years, we've had 1 commit suicide. And looking at all of the national numbers, we think that that's not a very bad place to be. I wish that number were 0. But I cannot tell you how many times I have heard the comment that after this weekend, what we did, suicide is now off the table. And if we can just save 1 from committing suicide, if we can save 1 marriage from breaking up, it's all worth it. So, a couple of things. We've got to get these folks together, and we've got to get them the sense of community. In World War II, it took a lot of times 3 months to get guys back to their families. And then when they got back home, 20% of the population was in uniform, so they had all kinds of people to talk to about it. Today, that number's 0.05%. They don't have anybody to talk to about it. And every one of them has told me that as soon as a counselor says, I know how you feel, they get up and walk out of the room. But the guys that were there with them, they can listen to that from them, and that's the help they need. Today, I have had a veteran tell me that he shot an enemy combatant on Monday and was home at his house on Wednesday with his kids. And as he walked in the door, he noticed that he had blood on his boots. I got to believe that's a little harder than what has happened in the past. And so, again, I want to commend all of you for doing what you can do to help on this. VFW and American Legion are not doing a very good job of getting the younger group in there. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if it's even possible to really get them involved. The VFW and the American Legion did a lot of good for a lot of people in the past, but they are not connecting with the, not very many of them. There are some out there that are doing a great job, but not very many of them are connecting very well with the post 9/11 veteran community. That would be one start to try to figure out how we can do that. Look around and see. There are some that are doing a great job, and they're doing it a lot different. They're not playing bingo. They're not having a bar. They're not having the kind of things that the normal setup was, but they're, video games or whatever it takes to get them in there. But giving them the community to be able to communicate is important. And one other thing on the opioid thing, the what's it called? Ibogaine sounds wonderful, but I hope we're working on the overprescription of opioids. Every Purple Heart veteran I think I've ever talked to said he feels like he has been overprescribed opioids and a lot of other drugs, but especially opioids. I had my shoulder redone, and I was pretty drugged up when I left. My wife went to the drugstore, filled the prescription. I took one opioid before I went to bed because I had no idea what I was going to wake up to And when I woke up the next morning, I had a pill bottle. There were 59 more. If I took all 59 of those, the chances of me becoming addicted to opioids was through the roof. I was furious. I called the doctor, the pharmacy. I even called my sheriff. Then I had my knee redone a couple of years later, and I told the doctor, I said, if you give me more than 3, I'm not going to fill the prescription. He said, well, 3 is a waste of time. I said, well, over 3 is getting me addicted to this stuff. And he gave me 3, and I've only taken the 1 that I took. And then you got to figure out how to get rid of them. Somebody's going to break in my house and kill me for 59 opioids. So I hope we're working very hard on stopping the overprescription of these, because that's where it all starts. And let's don't get any more people needing Ibogaine. Let's stop it before it ever gets started, because I think the vast majority of veterans, especially, that are addicted to opioids were legally prescribed to them. So there's a lot to work on. I'm a little passionate about this subject. I will be more than happy to help in any way that you think I might be able to help. But the biggest thing is we've got to get these guys and ladies working together. Because nobody, it's the same reason folks jump on hand grenades. Veterans fighting together would rather them die than their buddy die. And they'll do anything to help them, help each other. So I think that's where we need to start, is we've got to figure out how to get them together to work with each other. So again, thank you for everything that you're doing here. And I am more than willing to help in any way I can to help with this issue.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I appreciate all that you're doing. Anybody have any questions? Comments?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. One, thank you, Mr. Fordyce, for sharing what you're doing with the bonfire thing. I think you hit on something that's absolutely key and critical. And I think this has been touched multiple times here today. It's the community piece. And I too identify and see that the VFW and the American Legion, they just hadn't been able to fill that gap. I'm a life member of my local post in South Haven, but I'll tell you, there's not a lot of young folks that show up or even join. And so I guess I give back to the committee is, as we continue to work towards a solution, that we look holistically to try to address all the different aspects of it, but ultimately trying to get back to creating that community, right? And so if Ibogaine is a piece of that, maybe we join the trials, but then also partnering with our own Mississippi nonprofits, like the ones y'all have or the one that you have, and then also creating, I guess, like centers or communities centers of communities. And if that's around the armories that we have, maybe we look at something like that, but we have to get back to the community piece. I think you're absolutely right. And so I appreciate that, and just try to keep that in mind as you continue to work through recommendations on how we move forward.
If you don't mind, I'm going to add a little bit to that. So if you look since COVID nationwide, everybody told us to isolate. And if you look since that situation there, the suicide rate has gone up substantially. We as human beings are a tight-knit group. It doesn't matter. If you look at all the veterans, it doesn't matter what you are, left, right, what color you are, we all fight for the same thing. So we as a community need to come together more than 2 days a year, because we come together on Memorial Day and Veterans Day. There needs to be more veterans community events out there more than twice a year. If we can do it 4 or 5 times a year or every other month, get out there in the community. Like they have the Suicide Jubilee that's brought up here, that started here, I think 2 years ago now, with Mike Couch and them. We need to get the community more involved more than twice a year. So, and that's the biggest thing, is getting them involved.
Just to add on to this, and try not to take too much of our time here, but Chaplain Byrd and I, and you speak freely, Jason, as we go, just want to present, I think that fits with what we're discussing here, kind of an approach or a strategy that incorporates much of what we've discussed here today that we'd like to kind of put into consideration as we formulate how do we communicate this? How do we structure it? How do you organize this in such a way that it gets after all the different things that we've kind of talked about? We mentioned at our first meeting, the Army's approach, health and human fitness, that incorporated different domains. And this is an attempt to kind of recommend that to you. 4 pillars or domains that could be utilized in all of these different things we could utilize to communicate that. One is the spiritual, social, physical, and mental pillars that would help us in organize it in such a way that we can get this across to and include kind of a holistic approach to what we're discussing here today. And then Chaplain Byrd also included some of the questions you had as far as the National Guard, some things that address some of the questions that you had. So obviously, as chaplains, we see the need, and probably all of us here see the benefit of a spiritual aspect of this. Religion, faith, spirituality, which could be defined differently probably for a lot of us, but there are hundreds of studies out there that incorporate and communicate and demonstrate the benefit of religion, faith, and spirituality when it comes to meeting the needs that we're talking. Provided a little table. Chaplain Major Hank Mauderer is an active duty chaplain. This was his capstone event in working toward a master's degree in helping to utilize hundreds of studies that have been done that communicate the importance of spirituality, religion, and faith, and how it impacts all the different things that we're talking about here. For example, the first category, which incorporates all kinds of different things, physical issues, mental issues, etc. 454 studies were considered, and of all those, there's a 90% advantage or gain when it comes to utilizing religion, faith, spirituality toward benefiting those categories. And you can go down the list of different things: social needs, mental health, health behaviors, physical health, things like that. And you can see the advantages in this table that he developed based upon hundreds of studies that were done in the left column there, and the different advantages. The only negative one was weight, and I think that just had to do with fried chicken and Baptist. I'm not sure what exactly that means, but there are numerous things that could be utilized there in terms of emphasizing the spiritual domain, which represents different groups. It doesn't have to be a one specific type of faith group. But when you think about purpose, how do you, and I have the privilege of working with our veterans in our veterans homes through the Mississippi Veterans Affairs, 5 homes throughout the state. How do you communicate purpose to someone who's confined to a bed? How do you communicate purpose to someone who's confined to a wheelchair, that sort of thing? How do you say to that person, there's a purpose for your existence? Religion, faith, spirituality is a big way to get after why do I even exist? Why am I still here on the earth? And that can certainly be utilized throughout. The idea of forgiveness, redemption. One man said in terms of forgiveness on the spiritual side, he recommended, this is Bill Acton, I'm looking for that quote, but he said that of all the mental health issues that are represented, he said 70% of those who were in mental institutions, 70%, and I think there's studies to back this up, 70% of those in mental institutions could be released from there if they could come to terms with the idea of forgiveness. How many veterans struggle with the idea of forgiveness? I had a gentleman at a veterans home, Korean War veteran, a pastor, who confided that he still struggled to this day with actions that he had to be involved with in Korea. And so forgiveness is a piece of that. So the spiritual dynamic, we would love to put that into consideration as well. There's all kinds of ways to get after that. We have a number of chaplains in the Mississippi National Guard who are trained and capable to help equip people through workshops and different pieces. They're familiar with pluralistic environment where many denominations are involved, and in terms of even trying to stand up maybe some sort of organized way to get after networking with religious leaders in our state, pastors, churches, so that there's a veteran in the North who has a crisis situation. We have maybe a pastor who's available, who's been trained or equipped in some way to help network there. And through our religious organizations in the state, our churches and other organizations that have members of their bodies who are veterans, those are great ways. We had a veterans breakfast this past Saturday. We had 25 veterans present, and it was exciting for our little church to be able to host that. What a great way to connect with veterans, even in our churches and different religious organizations. So spiritual, social, things like the Warrior Bonfire and your organization, that kind of helps speak to or experience the relational aspect of our veterans getting together, mental health things that are available, as well as the physical aspect, example, Ibogaine and other types of things that could be done to help utilize the physical. I'll turn it over to Jason and at least cover the aspect of what the Guard is doing and any other comments you want.
I'll just be very brief. You've all got a handout that's got all the behavioral health aspects that the Guard provides for all of our soldiers, and the steps that we've taken to try to mitigate suicidal ideations with a suicide intervention officer that is in every organization, company level and above, has to be appointed by the commander. Has to go through at least ACE. Most of them have gone through the ASSIST training that was mentioned over there, which the chaplains provide throughout the state. We have Sergeant Huffman, who's the risk reduction, resiliency, and suicide prevention officer there. And also we have the game plan there for both on-duty and off-duty status. It's all in that packet of information that we gave. So I'll just answer any questions if anybody has any about that.
You said that the Guard now has a suicide
intervention officer has to be appointed by a commander, by a unit.
What size unit?
Company and above. And there has
Every
to
company in the National Guard.
And there has to be one for at least every 50 personnel.
Great.
All right. There's no other questions. We have next on the agenda, open discussion. What I'd like to do is talk about, I think we had 3 different bill ideas when we ended our last meeting. So I want to open it up for anybody to say anything else. I'll give an update on my end on those 3, and then we can figure out a date for our next meeting. And again, we need to go over our dates as far as our deadlines. But is there anything else anybody wanted to bring to the table to talk about today?
Would like to mention just one other thing that I forgot to say. Dave Grossman wrote 2 very interesting books. My wife thinks I'm crazy because all I read about anymore is combat and killing, and but he wrote 2 books called On Combat and On Killing. And he runs a very interesting organization called the Killology Institute. And he wrote that God hardwired all the animals in the animal kingdom not to kill their own, because then the species would fail to exist. But he did not do that with us. He gave us free will. And we're basically the only animals in the animal kingdom that we kill each other, and we do it wholesale. And he said that it greatly affects everybody who does it. The ones that it does not affect are the ones that we really need to worry with. but it greatly affects everybody who does it. And in one of the books or the other, I was reading one night and I came across a passage of his, and it's now the tagline of our organization, but it makes so much sense. He said, "Pain shared is pain divided, and joy shared is joy multiplied." And what a great way to look at this. I sat up in bed and I said, well, that's what we do. And I contacted him the next day and I said, call me when you get a chance. And he called and we talked about it, and he said, yeah, you can use that. So that is our tagline now, but you know, it addresses everything that we're talking about here when dealing with veterans.
Hey, anybody else? Okay, what I'd like to do is touch on, I think there were 3 bills that and it may have been a 4th one. But we had talked about, what was it that you did? So what now? Right, okay, all right. Yeah, all right, so the HTF, that's, y'all had brought that up about the fitness, holistic, right? And so basically we didn't see where any other state had passed any legislation with that. They could be just something that's internal. I don't know. Y'all let us know if that's something that we need to codify. I mean, that'd be.
We just kind of modified that idea with the 4
Yeah.
pillars there. We
Yes, sir.
took that thing and
You've got it.
and
Okay, all right.
condensed it down into the 4 pillars.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I don't know if we need to go forward with that as far as like a bill. We had talked about having some PSA, social media hotline with people that actually the term was they want to be able to talk to somebody that talks like them. And so that would need to be like a line appropriation if we wanted to do that. Would that be more suited for the VA to take that on if we were able to fund that for y'all? Okay. Yeah, well, what we'll do is for the next time we meet, we'll have the bill. We won't have it dropped. It won't be public, but it'll be, you know, where y'all can amend with it. I think we talked about the Ibogaine, that we were gonna get a bill for that, and I'm gonna go ahead and we can work with our House attorneys and just figure out what their language is and roll with that. Where we'll have a vehicle in the Senate side. The TANF funds, which is new but not new, I want to look into seeing where those TANF funds could go to nonprofits to try to help. You said we had 45,000 or 4,500 nonprofit thousand. So probably they're not all great, but we've got to make sure that we know what we're doing there. Yes, sir. Okay. Well, I'd like to see ways that we can use those TANF funds. Now, again, we are deadline oriented, deadline driven. It's just the nature of the legislature. Just to go over some dates of deadlines, the deadline for requesting a bill is going to be January the 14th. So if we have an idea, we need to get it in drafting by January the 14th, preferably before. The introduction of bills will be January 19th, but the main thing is we have that January 14th where the concept of the idea of what we're trying to pursue has already been sent into our attorneys. We're not supposed to meet without a 15-day notice. So if we were to have another meeting, it would need to be after December the 2nd. I would suggest that we do. And I think that whenever we do, we actually come back and maybe not have as many presenters. If there's somebody that you think has something that can be said, let's get that. We'll maybe do that towards the end of the agenda. What I think we need to do is focus on legislation that we're trying to draft, and we critique that. And these could be bills that we, as Chairman Creekmore said, we could endorse to try to get the legislature to have more of an appetite for it. But in looking at everybody's calendar, if we can look at, the second or third week of December, I think that would be best, probably the second week of December where we're not interfering with Christmas. Is there a certain day that is good for y'all or bad for y'all that week? All right, well, we did Monday at 10 a.m. Do we want to do Monday at 10 a.m. again? Okay, so that would be December the 8th. Work for everybody? 10 a.m. to 16. And again, what I want to have is I'd like, so legislation works where I can make a request, but I don't actually introduce it. And that deadline, I think I just told you I was January the 17th. So I'd like to have some legislation here for the task force to look at to see if we need to tweak. It will not be like public record. Obviously, this is public record. I'm not trying to hide anything. It's just, there may be a bill that we want to make sure we get the wording right before one of us just puts our name on it and endorses it and puts it out there for public consumption. But, has anybody got anything that they'd like to add before we adjourn? Okay. Sir?
One question you asked in the last committee meeting was how many veterans are insured with health insurance? Of the roughly 200,000 veterans in the state, 88% are covered under health insurance. And 96,000 veterans are enrolled in VA healthcare. State.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
half of the
Okay,
veterans.
that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, it looks like this room is booked that day. How about Tuesday, December the 9th at 10 a.m.? Y'all good with that? Okay.
That works. Got it.
Okay. Well, if nobody has any other thoughts, then I will entertain a motion.
Rise and report.